well, I guess he knew how to get to me because he wanted, which he always said, he wanted to control me. And if he couldn't control me, then he didn't want me around. So he came over and he told me, he said, you have to leave. You weren't invited anyway. I was about 7 months pregnant. And I'll never forget that as long as I live. And Mary, she broke down and she just cried and cried. She said she just couldn't believe that he said that to me.
Florence Ballard never hid how she felt about Berry Gordy. She couldn't. Because the truth was, she had every reason to resent him. Motown was built on dreams. But Florence's dream turned into a nightmare. She was one of the founding members of the Supremes, yet she was treated like an outsider. The money? Barely enough to live on. The control? Absolute. And worst of all, Berry Gordy made it very clear that Diana Ross was the priority. So, when Florence got a chance to speak, she spoke, loud and clear.
And I told him, that's right, I wouldn't stand in the way if she wanted to be a single artist. But by the same token, I didn't say that I would leave the group either.
At the height of their fame, the Supremes were everywhere, on TV, in magazines, selling out concerts. But behind the scenes, things weren't as glamorous as they seemed. Despite being one of the biggest groups in the world, they were barely making enough money to live on. And Florence Ballard, in particular, seemed to feel the weight of this reality more than anyone. In a 1966 interview, Florence, Diana Ross, and Mary Wilson were asked about their earnings. When the interviewer questioned how much they were paid, the answer was shocking: $50 a week.
Do you get an allowance every week?
Yes, we get an allowance.
How much did you get? Come on,
We got $100 a week.
You got
Although it was cut down to $50. Excuse me, correction.
It was cut down to $50 a week?
Our manager cut it down. Is that awful?
Considering how much money the Supremes were bringing in for Motown, this seemed almost unbelievable. The interviewer even reacted in disbelief, saying that amount was hardly enough to get by on. But Berry Gordy, the founder of Motown and the man who controlled their careers, had decided what they were worth. And to him, it seemed they weren't worth much. Diana, trying to explain the situation, mentioned that they charged expenses to their hotel bills, as if that somehow made up for their low pay.
We charge in the hotel. We usually charge, our food, we sign our check, so it goes right onto the hotel bill. But for our personal things, we get $100 a week. He hasn't cut it down yet.
But that wasn't real income. It was just covering their immediate costs while leaving them with little financial security. Florence didn't say much, but it wasn't hard to imagine how she felt. She had been part of the group since the beginning, had worked just as hard as Diana and Mary, yet here they were, struggling to get what they deserved. Meanwhile, Berry Gordy and Motown were making millions off their success. Then, in the middle of this already uncomfortable conversation, the interviewer made a comment that made things even worse. He turned to Florence and made a remark about her weight, as if to suggest that she needed more money just to eat.
Florence, that's hardly enough to feed you, is it, Florence?
That's right. I'll be losing weight soon.
It was unnecessary, unkind, and deeply embarrassing. Yet, neither Diana nor Mary stepped in to defend her. They just let the moment pass, moving on as if it hadn't happened. It must have been a lonely feeling for Florence. She was already being pushed to the side within the group, and now, even in public interviews, she wasn't being treated with the same respect. Watching Diana brush off the issue of their low pay, knowing Berry Gordy was behind it, and then having to sit through a personal insult with no support must have been difficult. This interview was just one of many moments that likely made Florence question her place in the Supremes and at Motown. She had dreamed of being a singer, of making it big, but the reality of that success was far different from what she had imagined. Instead of being rewarded for her talent and hard work, she was being underpaid, overlooked, and at times humiliated, all while Berry Gordy kept full control of the money and the group's future. Florence didn't speak out much in this interview, but her silence said a lot. She knew things weren't fair, but what could she do? Berry Gordy had total power, and questioning it too much could mean losing everything. It was a sad situation, one that would only get worse for Florence in the years to come. While Berry Gordy may have been the mastermind behind Motown, it was clear that Diana Ross was his favorite. And when Berry played favorites, it meant that others, especially Florence Ballard, were often pushed aside. Florence had already been struggling. She was no longer a supreme and her career had taken a hit, but even outside of the spotlight, she still found herself on the receiving end of Motown's politics. One night, Mary Wilson invited her to a party at Berry Gordy's mansion. Florence, who was 7 months pregnant with twins, wasn't sure if she should go. But Berry's own brother, Fuller Gordy, told her she was welcome. So she decided to attend, hoping it would be a chance to reconnect with old friends. But the moment Diana saw her, things changed. Florence felt a tug on her coat, Diana trying to get her attention. It wasn't a full confrontation, but Florence still told her not to do it again.
And I had on this long fall, and I felt somebody jerking. And I turned around, and Diane pulled the fall. And so I looked at her, and I told her, don't do it again.
Not long after, Diana went to Berry. Maybe she thought Florence showing up would cause tension. Maybe she felt like it wasn't the right time or place. Either way, Berry didn't hesitate to step in.
So he came over and he told me, he said, you have to leave. You weren't invited anyway. I was about 7 months pregnant.
Florence was stunned. She had been told she was welcome. And now, at 7 months pregnant, she was being told to go? She didn't move right away, standing her ground. But Berry made it clear that there was no room for discussion.
So he came back around. He said to me, he says, I thought I told you to leave. He said, but since you haven't, I'll have you thrown out.
Florence had no choice but to get up and go. This moment showed just how much control Diana had over Berry. It didn't matter that Florence was 7 months pregnant. It didn't matter that Berry's own brother, Fuller Gordy, had welcomed her. If Diana wanted her gone, Berry made sure it happened. The betrayal was clear, and it wasn't the first time. Florence Ballard had every reason to despise Berry Gordy. She saw how he played favorites. She saw how he underpaid his artists while Motown raked in millions. And most of all, she saw how he let Diana Ross step all over her. Even when Florence was still in the Supremes, the tension was obvious. When Berry started pushing Diana Ross to the front, Florence noticed, and she had no problem speaking on it.
And I told him, that's right, I wouldn't stand in the way if she wanted to be a single artist. But by the same token, I didn't say that I would leave the group either.
You see, everything changed in 1963 when Berry Gordy made Diana Ross the lead singer. It was a controversial decision. Florence had always been the powerhouse vocalist, but Ross had a softer, more pop-friendly voice that Gordy believed would be more commercially successful. And he was right. In 1964, Where Did Our Love Go became their first #1 hit on the Billboard Hot 100.
You came into my heart.
From that point on, the Supremes became unstoppable. Between 1964 and 1967, they scored 10 more #1 hits, making them Motown's biggest act and one of the most successful female groups in history. They perfected their live performances, working with choreographer Charlie Atkins and music director Maurice King, turning their shows into polished, high-energy productions. But as the Supremes' star rose, Florence started to feel left behind. She had once been the group's leader, the one who started it all, and now she was being pushed into the background. She resented the way Berry Gordy favored Diana Ross, giving her the best songs and more attention. The tension between the three women grew, and soon Florence turned to alcohol to cope. Her drinking became more frequent, and it started affecting her performances. She began missing rehearsals, showing up late and getting into arguments with Ross and Wilson. Gordy's patience was wearing thin. When Florence missed shows or recording sessions, Motown quietly replaced her with Marlene Barrow from the Andantes. By April 1967, things were spiraling out of control. Cindy Birdsong from Patti LaBelle and the Bluebells was brought in as a stand-in for Flo. But Flo didn't realize that her days in the group were already numbered. On July 1st, 1967, one day after her 24th birthday, Florence performed with the Supremes for the last time at the Flamingo in Las Vegas. She had been drinking before the show, and when she stepped on stage, it was clear she wasn't herself. She wore a suit that didn't fit right, with a noticeable stomach bulge, and her performance was erratic. Gordy had seen enough. He ordered her to leave immediately and return to Detroit. Just like that, her time in the Supremes was over. Cindy Birdsong was officially named her replacement.
Well, I guess he knew how to get to me because he wanted, which he always said, he wanted to control me, and if he couldn't control me, then he didn't want me around.
At the same time, Florence had begun an affair with Tommy Chapman, one of Barry's chauffeurs. They were inseparable, and she didn't seem to care that people were talking. Eventually, they got married, but while her personal life changed, her drinking only got worse. She missed another show after being found drunk in bed, and it was clear that she was in freefall. Her appearance changed. She wore harsh makeup, dark sunglasses, and seemed to be trying to hide from the world. For the first time, she even drank before going on stage. That was the final straw. Gordy demanded she be removed from the group. A few days later, Florence Ballard was officially fired from the Supremes. Flo's departure from the Supremes wasn't just the end of her career, it was the start of a heartbreaking decline. Without the structure of Motown, she struggled to rebuild her life. Her attempts at a solo career failed, and financial troubles mounted. She and Tommy Chapman had children together, but their marriage was troubled. By the early 1970s, Florence was broke, battling depression, and living on welfare. It was a tragic downfall for the woman who had once been the heart and soul of the Supremes. She had founded the group, named them, and been their first real star. But in the end, she was left behind, discarded by the very machine she helped build. As part of her $160,000 settlement, Florence was forbidden from even mentioning that she had been a member of the Supremes. It was as if Motown wanted to erase her from history. Still, she tried to rebuild. She signed a recording deal with ABC Records, hoping for a fresh start. With dreams of independence, she entrusted her settlement money to an attorney who was supposed to manage her finances wisely. She and her husband, Thomas Chapman, even started their own management company. For a brief moment, things looked promising. In November 1968, Florence gave birth to twin daughters, but as her family grew, her career failed to take off. Her husband lacked the experience to guide her professionally, and instead of sold-out arenas, Florence found herself performing in small bars and grills. The woman who had once captivated audiences around the world was now struggling to make ends meet. By 1969, the weight of her struggles became unbearable. Florence had gained weight, fallen into a deep depression, and refused to leave her home. The industry had turned its back on her, and so had many of the people she once considered friends. Florence knew she had been wronged. In a desperate attempt to reclaim her place and seek justice, she sued Motown in 1973, alleging that Diana Ross had secretly, subversively, and maliciously plotted to push her out. But her case was dismissed. By then, she was pawning her jewelry just to survive. She tried everything to hold on to her home, but it wasn't enough. Eventually, she was forced to move in with family and apply for social assistance. Her fall from grace did not go unnoticed. By 1974, newspapers picked up on her plight, and soon her tragic story made national headlines. Fans, outraged by the way she had been discarded, sent her letters filled with support. Offers started to come in for talk show appearances, giving her a rare chance to tell her side of the story. But Florence's pain ran deep. No amount of fan mail or public sympathy could heal the wounds she carried. In June 1975, Florence made what would be her final stage appearance. She performed at a benefit concert for a black female prisoner who had been accused of offing a prison guard who her. That night, Florence received a standing ovation. For a fleeting moment, it seemed as though she was on the brink of a comeback. But the weight of the past was too much to bear. Mary Wilson, who had also been cut out of Diana's spotlight, tried to convince Florence to return to the group. But by then, Florence was too broken. She had been let down too many times. The longer she went on, the more isolated and depressed she became. In 1975, Florence finally caught a break. She won a lawsuit settlement, giving her enough money to buy a house and a Cadillac. To the outside world, it looked like a turning point, a chance for her to start over. But just months later, on February 21, 1976, Florence Ballard suffered a fatal heart attack, caused by a blood clot in a coronary artery. She was only 32 years old. More than 5,000 people gathered to mourn her. They came from all walks of life, but all of them were united in their grief, paying respects to a woman whose voice had once defined an era. But there was one person whose presence at the funeral sparked controversy: Diana Ross. It's unknown whether Diana was even invited, but when she arrived in a limousine making a grand entrance, she was booed by several mourners. Her own mother, who was also present, appeared visibly upset at the reaction. Diana sat in the front pew with Florence's grieving family. At one point, she took Florence's youngest daughter, Lisa, and placed her on her lap. A photographer captured the moment, and the image became one of the only publicly available photos from the funeral. But to some, Diana's behavior felt more like a performance than genuine mourning. In 2010, journalist Michael Musto spoke with writer Mark Bigo, who had attended the funeral. Bigo recalled that Diana arrived with 2 bodyguards and let out a loud, dramatic scream as she entered the church. She collapsed in an exaggerated swoon, forcing her bodyguards to carry her to the front pew. Mourners gasped in shock. Some strained to catch a glimpse of her, while others shook their heads in disapproval. Bigo later wrote, "I have never seen such a choreographed display of drama in my life. It appeared to be the worst act of mock mourning I had ever seen. She wouldn't even allow Florence to be the star of her own funeral." Even in death, Florence Ballard's story was overshadowed. Meanwhile, long before Florence's death, Motown itself had started to decline. In early 1968, legendary producers Holland Dozier Holland left the label in a dispute over royalties and profit sharing. Their departure left a void that was especially noticeable in the quality of Diana Ross and the Supremes' music. Between 1967's Reflections and 1969's The Wait, only 6 out of 11 singles reached the top 20, a far cry from their golden era. Even more telling, only one song, Love Child, managed to hit number 1. By then, the magic was already fading. Mary Wilson and Cindy Birdsong had been replaced on many recordings by the Andantes, session singers who were brought in to polish Diana's vocals. Florence Ballard may have been erased from the Supremes' legacy, but the group was never the same without her. Florence Ballard's story became a haunting example of how the music industry can build a star, then break them. She was the soul of the Supremes, the powerhouse voice behind the polished harmonies. But when she was no longer useful to Motown, she was discarded, left to fend for herself in an industry that had already moved on. She should have been celebrated. Instead, she died struggling, while others took credit for what she helped create. Florence Ballard was a Supreme, but in the end, she was treated as anything but. Anyway, that's it for this video, folks. Bye!